Hello and welcome back to my channel. In today's video we have some tomatoes that need uppotting. That basically means that they're outgrowing the current cells that they're in and they need to be potted up into larger containers so that they can keep on growing. Now at this stage they're not quite ready to go out in the garden, both because they're still a little bit too small, as well the temperature outside is still too cold to plant tomatoes. Ideally you want to make sure that you're no longer getting a frost in order to plant your tomatoes outside, because tomatoes just can't take those freezing temperatures. Now I have 48 tomato plants here. I'm not going to be doing all 48 tomatoes in this video, but I will do one or two so that you get the idea of how to do it and how to do it properly. There's a couple things that you're going to need in order to uppot your tomato plants or any plants that you plan on uppotting. First, you need a larger size container, and ideally you want your container to be quarter to a half size bigger than the current cell that your tomatoes or your plants are in. You're also going to need some labels to make sure that you keep your tomato plants labeled properly. And you need some moist potting soil to work with. You want to make sure that you're using a light soil like potting soil to make sure that the soil is light and fluffy so that your tomatoes can continue to grow strong without being put in too compact of a soil. You definitely don't want to use the soil that's out in your garden because it's just too heavy, and you could also potentially bring insects and other bugs into your plants. Now I've used boiling water to moisten my soil, and this just will kill off any insects or eggs that are currently in the soil, but it also kills off the nutrients that are in the soil if you use boiling water. So I'm going to be pre-fertilizing my soil using some granular fertilizer today to make sure that the tomato plants continue to get the nutrients that they need to grow nice and big and healthy and strong. So we've already pre-moistened the soil, and I've given the soil a chance to cool down so that we're not planting our tomatoes in boiling hot temperatures. And we're just going to take a couple handfuls of fertilizer and dumping it right inside, maybe about a cup or so, and then we're going to mix it up. That's all I need in terms of fertilizer, so let's get planting. So again, you want to make sure that you're not using too big of a container and that the jump is too large of a jump. You just want to go about a quarter to a half size bigger in terms of what cell your plants are currently in to what you're putting them in. Now these trays have 12 tomatoes in them. I've previously thinned them out so that there's only one tomato per cell, because tomatoes are heavy feeders, so you don't want your tomato plants competing for nutrients. One thing that's unique about tomatoes is the stem itself. The stem has little hairs on it, and wherever the soil touches the stem of your tomato, new roots will grow out. So when you're transplanting your tomatoes into larger pots, you want to transplant them as deep into the pot as possible so that new roots continue to grow, which will also help your tomato plant to be nice and stocky and sturdy and strong. The more stocky and sturdy your tomato plants are when you transplant them out into your garden, the better they'll be able to withstand all of the outdoor elements like the wind and the other weather. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to fill our pot with a little bit of soil in the bottom. We're not going to fill it all the way just yet. And we're going to dig a hole into that pot so we can get nice and deep down into the pot so that we can plant our tomato as deep as possible. The next thing we need to do is pop out our tomato seedlings. So I'm just going to squeeze from the bottom, which will bring the soil up to the top, and gently pull on it. You can also tip it to the side or tip it upside down to get that tomato plant out. So it has some nice roots on there, and we're just going to plant it down into our pot. And then we're going to backfill, meaning we're going to put soil all the way up to the top of the container and bury the tomato plant as deep down as we can. So we're just lightly filling it up, kind of patting it down as we go. And again, wherever the stem touches soil, new roots will grow. So this tomato should be nice and sturdy and strong by the time it goes out into my garden. And that's it, this tomato is planted. Let's do another one. So again, I filled this container about 1/4 of the way full, and then I've dug my fingers down to make a hole in the middle to place our tomato plant. And we're gonna pop another tomato out of the cell that it's currently in. I'm gonna tip it on its side, squeeze from the bottom, and gently pull it out. So we have a nice little soil-packed tomato plant here, and we're gonna place this right down into the pot that it's in. And then we're gonna backfill with soil right to the top of the container. Gently patting as we go. So that the tomato has nice compact soil and that there's no air gaps in the soil. And that's it, our tomato is planted. Let's do one more. So these are a cherry tomato that I'm planting today. They are called a sweetie tomato. They are a really nice, tasty cherry tomato, one of my favorites. So I've filled it about 1/4 of the way full. I'm going to dig a hole in the middle to drop my tomato down into, and we're gonna pop it right out of the cell. Squeeze from the bottom gently, pull it out, place it right down into our container, and backfill with more soil. Don't be afraid to make a little bit of mess. That's what gardening is all about. And there we go, our tomato is planted. All 3 of these are sweetie tomatoes, and I have 3 more tomatoes that are sweetie tomatoes, and then the other 6 tomatoes in this cell are red cherry tomatoes. So we have a lot of cherry tomatoes coming our way. When it comes to watering these tomatoes, I'm going to be placing the tomatoes back into this container. When it's all said and done, all of the tomatoes will be in a tray like this, and we're still going to water from the bottom at this point, which means we're going to fill this tray with water and let the tomato containers soak up the water from the bottom, ensuring that they're getting the right amount of water that they need. We're going to leave the tomatoes to soak up the water for about 20 or 30 minutes and then drain out any excess water that's left in the tray. You want to make sure that the top of your container is a nice dark brown. That means the water has reached the top and it's soaked up all of the water that it needs. There's a couple tricks to knowing when it's time to water your tomatoes. The first is by the weight of your container. When it's super light, that means there's very little water in the container and it's time to water them. The other is by the color of the soil. When the soil on top is a nice dark rich brown, that means there's plenty of water and moisture in the soil, but when it turns to a light brown, you'll know it's time to water within the next day or so, as water will still be down in the bottom part of your container, so you definitely want to wait about a day. Once you see the top of the soil turning a light brown, wait about a day or so, let the water drain out, let the water evaporate, and then it's time to water. And that's it. It's as simple as that when it comes to transplanting your tomatoes into larger pots and up-potting them so that they can continue to grow. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe if you found it helpful, and share it with a friend so that they can learn too. I'll see you in the next video. Bye, friends!